It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about, lots to get into. Big show. So much is going on. It's a busy week. Our featured story, we're talking about the Middle East. I'm surprised this did not get too much attention today. Everybody was talking about my New York Times article. People are talking about the killing of the Ukrainian refugee in America. I'm shocked that this did not get more coverage because this is a absolutely huge deal. I saw it this morning and couldn't believe it. I mean, on some level, I'm not surprised that the Israelis were willing to do this. On the other hand, it's unprecedented. And I'm a bit surprised by their boldness to actually see it happen. And so for those that don't know yet what I'm talking about, this morning, Israel struck the political leadership of Hamas inside Qatar. Now, although Israel has bombed, I think, 6 countries this week, Qatar makes it 6. They bombed the Freedom Convoy off the coast of Tunisia. They bombed Syria. They bombed Lebanon. They, of course, bombed Gaza. So that's 1, 2, 3. I don't know if it's, I saw that somewhere on Twitter, but they're bombing a lot of countries. And although they've been bombing many countries, this is the first time, I think maybe ever, that they've bombed one of these Gulf countries, one of these Arab Gulf countries like Qatar, like the Emirates, like Saudi Arabia. It's really bold and truly unprecedented. And so this was a decapitation strike, very similar to what they did against the Houthis in Yemen last week, where they carried out 2 strikes in Yemen's capital and claimed to have taken out the entire military and political leadership of the group. They appear to have attempted the same exact thing this morning in Doha, the capital of Qatar. And so far, preliminary reports say that they failed. They say that almost every member of the delegation which was present survived. So it's a very ambitious, bold move, has already upset the United States, and the White House doesn't even seem to have paid off. So we'll talk all about it. The timing, as usual, is very, very interesting. Yesterday, Donald Trump effectively gave an ultimatum to Hamas. There is a new U.S.-backed proposal for a ceasefire. This is happening concurrently with Israel's new offensive in Gaza City, which is also supposed to take place today. And so it seems that everything is on the edge of a knife here. Israel going into Gaza to carry out this once-and-for-all invasion. Trump with the last possible opportunity to secure a ceasefire. And the reports yesterday said Hamas was giving positive feedback to the proposal. At the same time, Iran has apparently made an agreement with the Europeans to re-engage with the IAEA. All of this happening in the past 48 hours, seemingly scuttled by the strike this morning. So we'll talk about the whole landscape. We'll give you an update on everything. There's been a lot going on in the Middle East, and we'll get into a lot of it tonight. We're also going to talk tonight about the Jeffrey Epstein letter, which you've all seen. We were going to cover it last night, but we ran out of time. Don't know that we'll get into it tonight. We might run out of time again because there's a lot to cover. But if we have time, we'll talk about the infamous letter I'm sure you've all seen by now. In July, we only heard rumors about this from the Wall Street Journal. Now we have it. And as I said last night, it's real. And it's truly shocking because when the Wall Street Journal originally reported about the existence of this letter, it's a birthday card, personally written by Trump, signed by Trump, to Epstein, and very cryptic, suggestive. It talks about sharing secrets with Epstein, about enigmas, And, given all of the symbolism surrounding Epstein and the stuff he was involved in, it's troubling. It's disturbing, to say the least. And anyway, as you all know, the letter, the existence of the letter was made known to us back in July. At that time, Trump and Vance vehemently denied that this was authentic. J.D. Vance goes on Twitter and this is his thing. He likes swearing. He's like a middle schooler that starts saying swear words on the bus to school because their parents aren't around. I'm really getting sick of it. Vance, every time you see Vance in a press conference, I know this isn't politically correct, but this is bullshit. Do the older kids think I'm cool? I know a politician don't usually talk like this, but this is a load of shit. And we're all supposed to go, look, Vance said the shit. He said, fuck. Pay attention, because he does this every week. And it kind of loses the effect. If it ever had any effect, certainly it has lost that effect now. It's like every rally he goes to, I know this ain't politically correct, and I'm from Appalachia, but this is a load of shit. And we're supposed to go, oh boy, this guy, he's not like the other politicians. You've never met someone like me. I say shit and ass. They all do this now. Ever since Trump started doing it, Beto O'Rourke does it. Vance does it. I've seen other people do it. It's tiresome. Anyway, just an aside. But Vance, his first response to the publication of the letter by the Wall Street Journal, he said, pardon my French, but this is bullshit. This letter isn't real. And the Trump administration said the same thing, denied the letter exists. Okay, well, now we have it. Now we've all seen it. That's his signature, literally in black and white, from Jeffrey Epstein's book. And it's not surprising. Epstein and Trump were best friends for 10 years. And not only that, but Epstein has a lot of personal artifacts, photos with Trump, with presidents, paintings of Bill Clinton in a dress, George Bush playing with a toy model of 9/11. Is it surprising that Jeffrey Epstein might have a personal artifact from Trump that could be considered embarrassing? Blackmail material, potentially? I mean, we have it. We've seen it. There's a photo of it. It came from Epstein's estate. If it's fake, I mean, I guess that'll come out in court. I don't see why it would be. So we'll talk all about that. It's just shocking, though, the lengths people will go to now defend this. And I'll steel man the Trump defense on Epstein. Look, when you're a rich and powerful person, I'm sure you meet a lot of people like that. And you don't necessarily know who they are. When you're a billionaire socialite, you tend to run in these circles. He knew everybody. Epstein did, and Trump did as well. If you're steel manning, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you want to give the best possible defense, you say something like he did 10 years ago. I got along with everybody. Maybe I'm named in the files, but I didn't do anything wrong. At this point, if there's nothing there, you wonder why he doesn't just disclose all of it. People are drawing a negative inference anyway. So if there's truly nothing there, by releasing it, it's not going to be a good look, but it's already not. People are already drawing a negative inference by concealing it. So I don't understand why at this point that's not being done. It makes me think there is something in there that's a problem for him. And if you go back and watch my show from July, I know this is the beginning of the show, but I know we're probably not going to get into it. If you go to my show back in July, I've been pretty consistent and said, I actually don't think Trump is guilty of a crime there. I doubt he's on the island. I doubt he's having sex with underage girls. Honestly, I doubt that. Just being honest with you. I don't think that's likely. But the longer this goes on, the less confident I am about that. My initial reaction was he's concealing it to save face, which makes sense. He's obviously not getting away with that. It's dragged on now we're in our third month of it. You have to ask, in month 3 of the scandal and the cover-up, why not just let it rip? It's already bad. Can it get worse? There's only one way it could get worse, and that's if there's something damning in there. And as time goes on, I think that becomes more of a distinct possibility. Anyway, if we have time, we'll cover that in full. Before we get into the news, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the show. I'm sorry I'm late. I got so sick today. Honestly, I'm just a dysgenic freak. You know it. I know it. You love reminding me of it. It's just true. I'm not built to last. I'm not built correctly. I barely slept last night, and then I just binge ate all day. I had a huge breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes. For lunch, I had tacos, queso. I got home, I fell asleep, and then I woke up and I got absolutely sick. Sick to my stomach. I was going to cancel the show because I was in a pretty rough state, and I'm still not feeling great, but I said, we got to do a show. It's New York Times Day. I have to do a show. So I just had to buckle up. I had to just buckle in and just get it done. So I apologize I'm late, but I was not feeling good. I was out of it. Yeah, people are going to say, well, that's because you're not eating raw, whole foods. That's because you're eating all that processed junk. Oh, save it. I don't even, who needs to hear all that? I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I live to eat. I don't eat to live, okay? I like Nick a lot, but he's wrong about this. You know, Nick is right about almost everything, but he's wrong about this. I see your little comments. I don't care. I like to eat, okay? I taste good. Let me have this one thing, okay? I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't have sex. Let me have this one thing. I'm a shut-in. I'm a recluse. Occasionally I indulge in, daily I indulge in num-nums, okay? Daily I indulge in the Zog slop. Let me have this one thing, please. Well, you're all out there living your awesome lives. People are out there with their girlfriends. People are out there eating out, drinking cocktails, letting loose, dancing like nobody's watching. And I'm a pretty disciplined guy, but the one thing that I like to enjoy, Taco Tuesday, okay? If that's a crime, then lock me away. But if not, then the show must go on. Anyway, the only reason I'm saying that is because I could already anticipate. I was debating if I should even say that I got sick because I just knew. You just know. You say, oh, I had a tummy ache. And here come the boomers. You need to try a parasite cleanse. That's parasite. Oh, well, have you tried a primal diet? Well, you need to exercise and sleep 8 hours a day. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. You're telling me for the first time. Exercise and good diet and lots of sleep? Tell me more. Wow, you put me on. All right, we're not doing this. we're not doing this, okay? Let's just forget it and let's just move on. You do your thing, I'll do mine. Leave me the fuck alone. All right, anyway, but so that's that. Get your hats. Get them while you can. Fuentes.store. Made in America, free shipping. Get them before the holidays. Subscribe to the archive, $100 a month club. I know that seems exorbitant, but you get to talk to me. Hang it out in the group chat. Talking about life, politics. People are loving it. People are truly loving the experience. AmericaFirst.plus, or if you're poor, if you are a broke loser, okay, if you are broke, if you are poor, if you are nothing, $15 a month, that's a joke, obviously. We value all our customers. We sell great products. $15 a month, you get access to the entire archive. No access to me. Too poor. Sorry. Not enough motion. That is AmericaFirst.plus. Check it out. All right. Let me take a little sip of water here just to settle my stomach so we can lock in. Before we get into our news, I do want to talk a little bit about my New York Times profile. Pretty sick. Pretty sick, right? Not gonna lie, pretty sick. The picture, aura. Auraful photo. I appreciate the author of the piece. My guy, dude, aura farming. We have to give credit to the GOAT. Credit to the GOAT, Robert Draper. We should not, I should not say this because then they're going to write nasty. You know, if I say he did a good job, then the next time they do a piece, they're going to say, whiny Nazi bitch, Nick Fuentes. Whiny Nazi incel loser, Nick Fuentes. But it was a great piece. I thought it was fair. Honestly, I thought it was fair. It wasn't a puff piece by any stretch. I mean, they're calling me a problem, a mosquito. Okay, what the fuck? Calling me a mosquito and my lifeblood is attention and a carnival barker. And, you know, so there were some jabs in there like, all right, Robert, you made your point. He got some shots in, but it was balanced, you know? And for full disclosure, you know, the journalist reached out to me a few weeks ago and said, hey, I'm doing this piece about your generational run. He didn't say that, but that's what we're all talking about. And I said, yeah, what the heck? So I called him and he interviewed me. And it was fair. I mean, much of what I said was faithfully reported in the piece, which is about as much as you can ask for. And I thought it was great. I mean, I think it could have been a little better. I'm still waiting on my profile. I just wish they could understand me, you know? And for those that didn't read it, it's on the New York Times, and they talked all about how my following has grown so much in the past year and how I'm feuding with Trump and I have this thing with Vance, and they talked about all the things people have been talking about. And people are asking me what my thoughts are on it. And I think, to be perfectly honest, here is the deal. I have become extremely critical of Trump, and it's just so transparent and obvious that now the left, they will take any ammunition to hit the president, even if it's coming from me. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, you know, but 7 days a week to the left-wing press, I am the neo-Nazi, incel, white nationalist, but whatever. But the one day that I criticize Trump, I'm a conservative influencer. I'm a conservative activist. I'm a hero. I'm a former Trump ally, a key lieutenant of the MAGA movement, right? So transparent. And this is what the media does. It's actually a little instructive because it gives you a little insight into how the media works. Does the media lie? I mean, sometimes they do. Is the media biased? Absolutely. But this is a little insight into the actual mechanistic process. It's kind of like the anatomy of how they operate. The left is set against Trump and the Republican Party and the administration. And so Trump is public enemy number one. If a guy like me is on the far right, if I'm on the right-wing flank of Trump and I'm causing Trump's base to doubt him or for them to doubt his credibility or sincerity, this actually undermines Trump in a way that the left cannot undermine him. Because Trump's base is inoculated from attacks that come from the left. Because if the left attacks Trump, Trump hand waves that away and says, that's fake news. That's the left-wing media. That's the lamestream media. And the base says, oh, why would we believe Don Lemon? Why would we believe the New York Times, CNN, etc.? But if I'm attacking Trump, I mean, I of course, I have the credibility. I was at Charlottesville. I was a J6er. I am a far-right live streamer. Well, I'm hitting Trump and his base in a vector that the left-wing media could never emulate or replicate. They don't like me. They don't want to understand me. They're not trying to do me any favors, although that might be a knock-on effect. What they want to do, and you see this all the time, they want to fan the cleavages on the right, the divisions on the right to hurt Trump. So if there is an internecine infighting on the right wing, the left wants to exacerbate that. They want to amplify that, to destabilize the right wing, to divide the right wing so that the left can press the advantage. And I fully acknowledge and I fully recognize that. This is what CNN does when they play my clips. This is what the New York Times does when they say, you know, the GOP has a white nationalist problem. That was the framing. The framing was not that I'm an Israel critic, because I think at this point that's what I'm more famous for. What I have blown up for in recent years is my opposition to the war in Gaza, the war in Iran. That was honestly my biggest criticism of Trump. That informs my critique of the online dissident right, of Vance, of Peter Thiel, of all of it. So it's even interesting in the title. Was the title, you know, oh, there's like the young generation on the right is critical of Israel. Here's their problematic champion. No, the angle was the GOP has a problem with white nationalists. And even in that title, why do you think they said white nationalist and not anti-Semite? The reason they said that is because everyone's being called anti-Semitic right now. And if you say that I am principally motivated by opposition to Israel, well, the left is going to sympathize with that. Many in the right will sympathize with that. Because people realize that the word anti-Semitism has no currency. There's something valid about opposing Israel, even if people think there's excesses and consider me to be a part of that. They chose white nationalist because that is still an ugly label. It's like white supremacist, Nazi. It's unflattering. And it makes the GOP look bad. Oh, the GOP is suppressing a white nationalist rebellion. That's not true. White nationalists are in the government, actually. Look at who's running the DHS Twitter account. It's clearly some like pro-white activist. These guys like Scott Greer, the Peter Brimelows, the Jared Taylors, all their people are sniffing around DC. They're at NatCon. Patrick Casey's at NatCon. They're all in these circles. So, this idea that the GOP is like suppressing white nationalism. No, if anything, the GOP is leaning into white nationalism to placate its radical base, who is angry about Israel. Case in point, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk has started promoting Steve Sailer, a white nationalist, arguably a racial realist. Charlie Kirk, the standard bearer of Trumpism in the youth movement, promoting Steve Sailer, a scientific racist. So if anything, white nationalism is discreetly being allowed and tolerated as a pressure release valve for the radical base. As suffice to say, you have to swallow endless pro-Israel stuff. We'll let you be more pro-white, more outspoken on race. Anyway, so even though the framing of the article is very telling, it's very informative, and it's a vector of attack on the GOP. The GOP is this disaster where they're suppressing odious racists because that's what the GOP attracts. Like, that's the vector of attack. Is the GOP has a white nationalist problem because that's the kind of crowd the GOP attracts, racist, evil people. And also, like I said, it's leaning into the infighting. So in that sense, the reason why the article is somewhat favorable is because they want to portray the GOP as destabilizing. So how do they do that? They say that the most hated man in the GOP is insurgent. He's opposing Trump and winning. People in Trump's base are not happy. And what does that say about him? So they're positive about my influence, the growth of my channel, the fact that I've gained traction. I'm winning these exchanges with other opponents of the New York Times like Tucker Carlson. but they still heap scorn on my politics. So, for example, there's a paragraph in here. It's so funny. He writes, Mr. Fuentes suggested that his most outlandish musings were when I was 18 and the beginning of the Trump movement, but I've become more moderate. He added, I would say that I've mellowed with age, which is what I said to him. He said, a review of Mr. Fuentes' recent remarks indicates otherwise. He said on his show in July that Hitler had aura, chided Polish people for having a bad habit of hating Hitler all the time. Last month on X, he characterized the Indian-American in-laws of Vice President Vance as Uber drivers and call center scammers. He also said on his show that all black people should be ashamed of crimes committed by others of their race, adding that white people are justified in being racist. So the balanced approach that I'm describing is they play up my insurgency, gaining traction, winning exchanges, doubling, quintupling his following, unignorably becoming a political problem for the GOP. On the flip side, but he's odious. He's racist. He's a Nazi. He's a sympathizer. He's a Holocaust denier, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's where it comes from. They have to give me my due once again, to lean into this infighting on the right, but not without putting me down and saying, well, but we don't approve of his politics. He's this odious character. He still is evil, etc. Casting aspersions on my motivations. Did he really mellow? No, not really. And so that's what this article is. And what is maybe on a higher level, what's interesting is clearly I do represent a phenomenon. I have beaten the odds. I have not just survived, but really exploded in popularity in spite of unbelievable censorship, blacklisting. And the narrative about me is that I am the worst person in the world. I'm this maniacal, evil, psycho, bigot. And so these things are in contradiction. There's a dissonance here. You either have to believe that, my audience is fake, which is, I don't think, plausible, or you have to believe that there are really a ton of really sick, evil people in America. And even respectable people like Dinesh D'Souza will credit me for being thoughtful. Like they must be in my rapture or something, enraptured by me. And the dissonance is, clearly I am doing something that is resonating. And I don't think most people are evil. I think that at this point in time, given the suppression as well as the attention I've gotten, if I truly was despicable, like they say, a long time ago, people would have been finished. If this was really just a shock jock routine, if I was just being edgy for the sake of it or a hateful bigot, I don't think there'd be that much interest in it. Clearly, there is something going on here. There is something powerful about what I'm doing. I'm highly talked about, highly polarizing, hugely popular with some, reviled by others. Now, if we had a real press, somebody, maybe just one journalist, would actually take an interest in profiling me. Because it is an interesting story. Is it not a microcosm of a Generation Z white male, the prototypical disaffected white male who got into politics 10 years ago and is transformed through these events, through the Trump election, the rise of the alt-right, the first Trump administration, January 6th. I mean, I was there for it all. The COVID pandemic, you name it. And if there was anybody with like, even a scholarly curiosity, a kind of academic curiosity about what I represent or, what I really am about, there'd be a profile that, I don't want to say sympathetic, but maybe charitable. That's not really what this is. What this is they're instrumentalizing my message for the purpose of the institutional left. And this, get this. The best part of the article was super, super subtle. Let me pull it up. This was really interesting. He writes, Until a month or two ago, Nick Fuentes was regarded by right-wing influencers as a mosquito-like interloper whose lifeblood was attention. Ignore his openly racist and sexist rants, Mr. Fuentes would flitter off into oblivion. Today, an entirely different consensus emerged on the right. The footprint of the oratorically proficient late-night streaming show host has not dwindled in the least. While his tens, if not hundreds of thousands of alienated young male conservative followers known as groypers, a nickname derived from an alt-right meme, or hang on, this is wrong. Here it is. He says he specifically has criticized the president for showing solidarity with Israel over the war in Gaza. Did anybody catch that? I'll read it again. He writes, specifically, he has criticized the president for showing solidarity with Israel over the war in Gaza. Well, that's an interesting way to characterize the Trump administration. Is that what the Trump administration is doing? They're showing solidarity with Israel in their war in Gaza? That is, the word solidarity is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. How about bombing Iran on their behalf? How about giving them weapons to commit a genocide? How about giving them cover diplomatically, militarily? Like, to characterize the Trump administration's support for Israel as showing solidarity over Israel's war in Gaza. Did you catch that? Be honest. Major red flag is going up on the field. And what that indicates is clearly an institutional bias, an institutional left-wing bias that either does not want to characterize me as part of the good faith critics of the situation in Gaza, or more likely, it's a downright sympathetic characterization of Israel's war and Trump's support of it. It's downplaying what is going on there. It's a sympathetic, talk about it, charitable. It's practically cover. Now, I'm not accusing the author of, being some kind of, suppressing information, but it represents an institutional bias. And so what this piece is sort of wielding this movement and what it is for the purposes of the institutional left. And a lot of people say to me, well, don't you recognize that this is how you've gone so wrong? Don't you recognize that if the left is using you to attack Trump, maybe you've lost the plot? And I say to that, you just don't know your history. And I don't even want to elaborate. I should elaborate a little bit because if I don't, it seems like I don't really have a reason. But this is exactly what the left did to Trump. Do you remember in 2015 when they said, please, Trump, do it, run for office. Please, we do not want you to be president, but we badly want you to run. Oh, this is hilarious. And they started out laughing and they started out smiling and they thought it was amusing and they thought that the GOP had a Trump problem. The GOP had a MAGA problem. And then Trump became the president. It's not a syllogism to say I will become president too, but it is to say, let's not necessarily assume that the left understands the animal they're dealing with. I don't think they do. I think that's to our advantage. They don't. They never have. And that's why 10 years ago, they thought I would disappear. That's why 10 years ago, they thought I was just another shock jock. They don't want to understand my appeal. And to that I say, ignore at your own peril. Don't listen, ignore, mischaracterize. Believe that you are, getting the upper hand at your own peril. I will not interrupt. And the only reason I say that very abbreviated explanation is because, I'm not going to spell it out for the left. Like, here's how you're going to neutralize me or something. But it doesn't worry me in the slightest. We want right-wing infighting. We want to force these issues to the fore. We want a battle. Do we want complicity? Do we want the status quo? Do we want lethargy? No, we want disruption. We want chaos. We want infighting. Yes, the GOP might lose some elections. That's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Yes, I recognize, I perfectly understand. in the process of this cultural revolution, I understand the GOP may win some elections, and that is a sacrifice that I am perfectly willing to make. I'm eagerly willing to make that sacrifice, actually, if in the end we have a transformed conservative movement that is actually further to the right than Trump. And it's funny, you know, I saw this. It's interesting because the left has so much to say about me all of a sudden. One more thing before we move on into the news. I saw Hassan Piker reacted to me again. 2 days in a row. Dude, the aura farming continues. He goes on a stream today and he says, normally I didn't talk about the irrelevant Nazi Nick Fuentes because he's irrelevant. But now he's the most relevant Nazi in America. It's like, bro, aura farming for free. Thank you very much. But he's reacting to me again. And dude, it is actually deranged how obsessed Hassan is with destiny. I'm watching these like Hassan criticisms of my videos for the narcissistic supply. Like I'm watching Hassan talk about me. I'm giggling. I'm kicking my feet. I'm watching Hassan for 20 minutes talk about me. But throughout the whole thing, he's just talking about like destiny, sex pestiny, molestiny, destiny, and I'm like, hey, isn't this supposed to be about me? Like, hey, sorry to interrupt. What the fuck does this have to do with destiny? This is about me. Or at least I thought. I watched his video yesterday and he kept talking about destiny. I'm like, this is weird. Like, who cares about that? Then today, another 20 minutes and it's like, destiny, destiny. It's like, dude, what, am I interrupting? Like, what the fuck did I just walk into? He's like, Destiny and Nick are making up talking points about me. It's like, dude, get a grip. I do not follow the left that closely. I do not care that much. But something is going on there. I don't know what I stumbled into there, but it's like, bro, just leave me out of it. Like, I thought they weren't friends or something. I don't know. I thought they were friends. They're not friends. But I'm watching this video and Hassan is like, we have to talk about Nick. He's cynically appealing to liberals, but he's still right wing. And then he just keeps bringing up like, this is why Destiny did this. And I'm like, what? Hey, hello. This is about me, I thought. So that was super bizarre. I don't know what's going on over there, but it's like, I don't know, really. I thought they were all on the same team or something on some level, but I guess not. Anyway, so I just wanted to throw that out there real quickly because I did see, you know, there's a New York Times, Kyle Kulinski, Hassan, they're all talking about me, but none of them really get it. And I think that it's just the right wing is impenetrable to them. They don't understand the language. They do not. It's a generational divide. You know, this Robert Draper, he seems like a nice guy. He's very cordial. But he's an older guy. It's like, you know, no offense. How's he really going to understand the contours of what we talk about? How's he going to understand even a quarter of what we say on the show? And I don't say that to be shitty at all. That's like my parents. How are my parents going to understand, 80%? My mom sends me AI videos that are obviously not real. I'm like, Mom, that's AI. Like the boomers are just not with it. So that is our great advantage. And not to kind of like push it beyond the scope of what we're talking about tonight, but I do think there's a great strength in this. Just some commentary on this whole dynamic. I think that our superpower is that we do have an exoteric and an esoteric meaning. Even if we can't help it, I try to be as clear as possible. If you watch my show, I want people to understand what I'm saying. I get mad when people don't get it. But maybe that is our greatest superpower, because I've talked about in the past, the great problem that we have is that if we avail ourselves to the public, we will be isolated, fired, targeted, destroyed. So the way that the Groypers have to accede to power and network is in a very discreet way. But this is a challenge because, of course, it'd be easier if we started a group and everyone had a membership and we said, oh, here's our Groyper congressman and here's our Groyper billionaire and here's our Groyper White House guy. And we're all going to get together and march. And like that'd make it easy for us to grow and et cetera. But we'd be vulnerable. On the flip side, if we're discreet, it makes it very hard to grow, but we also have a longer lifespan. We also have more institutional access. So it's like, how do you stay discreet but also grow? And it's like, it sort of has to be like this thing of ours. It almost has to be like something has to be left unsaid. And I think that might be the great superpower. And the reason I use the language I'm using is because this was the superpower of the Straussians. You look at Bronze Age pervert and that crowd, you look at Leo Strauss, Harvey Mansfield, that whole crew, Harry Jaffa, Alan Bloom, all of the acolytes of Strauss and his disciples, they thrived as effectively an underground secret club, an unofficial, informal, but nevertheless very connected, very tightly knit secret group. And so there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about that kind of organizing. It's very interesting. And so you can't necessarily be mad. I get mad that they don't fully understand me, but maybe that's a good thing. Anyway, that's that. I've got some interesting reflections on that, but they did a great job with the photo. The aura farming was crazy. I love the photos. Some of the lines in there are great too. There was one other section here I'll read to you, then we'll move on. They said, asked to comment about Mr. Fuentes' remarks, White House officials declined. Current and former members of the administration, as well as outside advisors, would not be quoted for the record about Mr. Fuentes out of fear, they said, of inviting online attacks from him and his zealous followers. 3 of them mentioned the sudden ubiquity of Fuentes-related clips circulating in their social media feeds. Raise your right hand. I swear I'm going to vote for Nick Fuentes. Now that's hot stuff, and you can get that at a number of different places. Asked to comment on his remarks, White House officials declined. Current members of the administration would not be quoted out of fear. Out of fear. They fear the Groypers. They fear the Groypers. Raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. We're pledging. Raise your right hand. Would not be quoted out of fear. That's power. This is what I've been trying to tell you. If they don't fear you, then you don't really have power. You don't really have leverage. Obviously. This administration will shit down the throats of its supporters all day, but they will not cross the Groypers because they don't want the heat. And by the way, that's why I went after Joe Kent all those years ago. That was the subject of so much acrimony from Tucker Carlson. That's why we went after Joe Kent. I said the era of Republicans trashing people on the hard right is over. And it's over because I will make you lose. I will make you lose in the biggest upset in Congress. I will take your white knight and I will drag him down if you say something bad about us, specifically for our views. If you say we don't like their criticisms of Israel, we are coming for you. And ever since then, they got a lot quieter, didn't they? Sort of the whole point. So anyway, I told you this last week. I don't need you to take my word for it. Watch me work. You know, a lot of people are unconvinced. I'm not, in some ways, I can't really do a good job of convincing you that I'm looking out for your best interest or trust me, please believe me. No, look, you need to get I put the information out there. I make the case, take it or leave it. Watch me operate. Watch, and as they say, learn. Watch and learn. And, so we just demonstrated. But anyway, great article. I mean, very unhappy with the article. Draper did a number on me. Oh, I hope he doesn't write another one because, man, they did a number on us. We're very unhappy. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to get into the Middle East. And this is going to be a big topic. Lots to discuss here. Okay, guys. So buckle up because we're going to need to do some background. I'm going to need to catch you up to speed here, and I'll give you a full account of where we are in the regional conflict. It'll be interesting. So the big development in the Middle East today is that Israel launched an airstrike on Qatar, which is completely unprecedented, totally bold. For those that don't know, Qatar is one of the oil-rich Persian Gulf nations east of Saudi Arabia. It is a peninsula inside the Persian Gulf, rich on oil, large population of Iranian exiles that fled after 79, and more close to Iran than the others, than the Emirates, than Saudi, than Bahrain. And Qatar's chief role in the Middle East is as a mediator. Qatar is mediating all the various conflicts. They're mediating between Iran and the United States. They're mediating between Israel and Hamas. They're mediators. This is the source of their regional influence. And the reason they're good mediators is because they have maintained a solid relationship with Iran throughout the Saudi-Iranian proxy war. And that was the source of a major diplomatic row in the first Trump administration. And anyway, this is some background. Now, as you know, Israel bombs a lot of countries. They bomb Gaza and the West Bank with impunity. They bomb Lebanon regularly. They have bombed Syria for over a decade. They do airstrikes in Iraq occasionally. They attack the Freedom Convoy in international or Tunisian waters. They bomb Iran, Yemen. But for them to attack one of the very rich, very influential Gulf countries is just a new escalation, extremely bold, without precedent. And the reason it's so unprecedented is because Qatar is playing a diplomatic role. This is like bombing Switzerland. It's like bombing Geneva. It is, now Qatar is not non-aligned. I wouldn't say that. But they are facilitating peace or facilitating peace talks. What's more, unlike these other countries, Qatar is a legitimate and solid state. Yemen is in a state of civil war, effectively, and has been for decades. Iraq was under occupation by the United States. Syria in the middle of a civil war. Lebanon in some form of a civil war for a long time. Gaza and the West Bank are everything other than in name protectorates of Israel. For Israel to hit Qatar is a big deal. And not only that, but Israel's trying to improve its relationship with these countries under the Abraham Accords. Israel wants the investment from the sovereign wealth funds of these countries. They're trying to build better economic and diplomatic relations with these countries, trying to achieve normalization, secure investment. They're trying to build an economic corridor through the Arabian Peninsula, through Israel, out to the Mediterranean Sea. This is going to dampen that. I know that the Emirates and Saudi Arabia are not happy about this. And so anyway, Israel attacked Qatar. Big deal, major deal. I'm trying to impress upon you the significance of it in itself. And the purpose of the attack was to decapitate the political bureau representing Hamas in Qatar. Throughout the war in Gaza, of course, Hamas is literally underground. They're in hiding, they're in tunnels. And so how Hamas negotiates with Israel is that its political representatives are actually and have been living inside Qatar. And they're living there because they know that Qatar is the mediator. The reason they're living there is because they presume it is unlikely that they will be targeted there because it would be so bold. So they have lived there, and Qatar has given them refuge there to facilitate diplomacy. And the understanding was that they were effectively off limits. They're diplomatic personnel living in diplomatic buildings representing Hamas inside a major regional power in the Middle East that's mediating the peace. So the logic was they were off limits. Well, we knew they were there. They've been there. And Israel decided today to bomb all of them. They were all gathered in a specific building for a meeting, the entire political bureau, the surviving leadership of Hamas. And Israel tried to decapitate the leadership of Hamas and kill all of them in one fell swoop in this airstrike. Now, they did not notify the United States until it was already too late. The United States, that's according to the United States. It's hard to know what's true or not, though. That's what they claim. The United States allegedly informed the Qataris, but again, too late. A strike was condemned by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia. And the White House itself rebuked the strike. Because another feature of Qatar is that it hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. So this is a U.S. ally. Steve Witkoff has been working closely with the Qataris. Trump visited Qatar. They're an ally. And Israel bombed them. Big problem. This is a story from the New York Times, and then we'll get into some of the background. We'll bring you up to speed where we are now. It says, quote, Israel attempted to kill senior members of Hamas in an airstrike on Tuesday in Qatar, a sharp escalation that brought the Mideast war to a close U.S. ally and a primary mediator in trying to end the conflict in Gaza. The Israeli strike on a Hamas meeting where the group said its officials were discussing a ceasefire proposal backed by President Trump threatened to undermine negotiations over the Gaza war. Threatened to undermine negotiations. The direct attack on Qatar's territory also risked antagonizing the Qatari government and destabilizing its diplomatic efforts in the war. Hamas said the Israeli strike had failed to kill senior officials in the group without specifying whether they had sustained injuries. In a statement, the group confirmed that the son of Halil al-Hayya, Hamas's chief negotiator, his office manager, and 3 other people affiliated with Hamas had been killed in the attack. But the strike killed a member of Qatar's internal security forces and injured a number of civilians. Qatar will continue its role as a mediator in the war, said the country's prime minister. But the Persian Gulf state has also formed a legal team to determine how to respond to Israel's attack. In other words, they will do nothing. Sheikh Mohammed, the prime minister, said, we have reached a decisive moment where there must be a response from the entire region to such barbaric actions. This is how you know Israel runs all their shit. Israel drops bombs in your country. They assassinate a political delegation that you are hosting inside your country. And your response is to call the lawyers. And your statement to the world is, are you guys seriously going to let this happen? Like, that's their statement. Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, they're positioning themselves as having regional influence. Saudi Arabia has a lot of defense spending, big contracts from the U.S. military. Qatar and the Emirates are playing these diplomatic roles, very wealthy. But when push comes to shove, and Israel is dropping bombs using American-bought advanced fighter jets, undetectable in your country, what can you do about it? Nothing. Nothing. You call lawyers. Israel calls Shin Bet. Israel calls Mossad. Israel scrambles the fighter jets. Israel launches missiles. They put their nukes out in full display so that satellite imagery can witness it. What do the Qataris do? The Emiratis? What do? They call the lawyers. They look around at their neighbors and say, are you guys seriously going to let them do this to us? Really? You can't let them get away with it. And they will. Of course they'll get away with it. President Trump gave what appeared to be conflicting accounts on Tuesday about when his administration knew about the Israeli strike. First, he said on social media that the U.S. military had informed his administration that Israel was attacking Hamas in the Qatari capital. This decision was made by Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said. It was not a decision made by me. He said he had immediately directed Steve Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, but that Witkoff had done so too late. He wrote on True Social, quote, I view Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the U.S. and feel very badly about the location of the attack. I love the passive language. Like the attack just happened to take place in Qatar. That was by design. They didn't throw a dart on the board. Dude, they're bombing everybody everywhere. He says, I feel badly about the location of that attack that happened. That just happened to occur there. He says, I want all of the hostages and bodies of the dead released in this war to end now. Now, let's be very clear about what is happening here. Let's characterize what is happening in the Middle East. Just a very quick refresher. What is going on here, contrary to the mainstream reports, which are always talking about ceasefire negotiations and hostage release agreements and, and all this kind of stuff. Let's cut through the nonsense. In light of all the evidence, the historical record going back to October 7th and before, what is happening now is that October 7th was Israel's once in a lifetime, once in a century, once in history opportunity to systematically destroy its chief adversary and only remaining opponent, only other contestant for regional hegemony in the Middle East, and that is Iran. And when I say systematically, what do I mean? Iran's nuclear program, its missile program, its Islamist regime, and its proxies. And in particular, when it comes to the proxies, Israel sought to roll back all of Iran's proxies. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the IRGC operating in Syria, and the Shiite allied militias inside Iraq. So what was framed to us as a ground war in Gaza in retaliation for October 7th, that is not what this is. October 7th was the precipitating event, the precipitating action that set off what was a plan that had been in the works for a long time. Very ambitious, far-reaching objectives across the entire region. So what's important to understand, this is not Israel retaliating against Hamas in Gaza for October 7th. They're using that as an excuse, enrolling a regional military campaign with significant objectives into that casus belli, into that justification for a war. We're fighting in Gaza. Oh, well, the Houthis are attacking shipping, so we need to bomb them too. Oh, Hezbollah is assembled on our northern border, so we need to bomb them too. Syria is supplying Hezbollah, so we need to overthrow Assad too. Iran is supporting these guys, so we need to take away their nuclear weapons and their missiles and overthrow their regime. You see? And this is how they've carried out the war. Now, in the furtherance of these objectives to take this war and systematically defeat in detail all of Iran's proxies, they have strategically stalled over the years. There has been a lot of talk about negotiations and ceasefires, but the only reason that there are talks of these things, and in some cases limited ceasefire or narrow agreements, is so that Israel can move the pieces around on the board. Israel had a temporary ceasefire with Hamas at one point. There was not a ton of operations going on, for example, not really a ceasefire, but there weren't a lot of ground operations in Gaza last summer. That's not because the war was coming to a close. It's not because there was a chance of diplomacy breaking through. It's because Israel was moving its forces to the north to take on Hezbollah, where they carried out an intense operation up there and ultimately led not just to the collapse of Hezbollah, but also the neighboring Assad regime. Whereupon Israel rearmed and then promptly returned to the south in Gaza, like they're doing right now. This is what they do. So you've seen for the better part of 2 years, headlines and stories about diplomacy and people furiously traveling around Steve Witkoff and Biden and Trump and ceasefires and terse negotiations. Once you understand that Israel has these regional ambitions, which are enormous, you know they're not going to be finished until all the pieces are off the board. Until the Houthis are gone, Hezbollah is gone, Gaza and the West Bank are annexed, Assad is out, and Syria gives up the Golan, The Shiites are neutralized in Iraq, and there's regime change in Iran, and all their weapons are taken away. The war is not going to be over until these things are achieved. In the meantime, the talk of ceasefire and all these things, it's buying time for a number of different reasons. One, the whole world wants the war to stop. Because while Israel is playing the chessboard, people are dying in Gaza, and the world is watching. One of Israel's objectives is to ethnically cleanse Gaza and annex the territory. And the world is seeing this as Israel plays this grand strategy chessboard of the region. So there is increasing diplomatic and economic pressure on Israel to end this war in Gaza. But if that happens, they might have to wrap up everything else. So Israel strings the world community along. We're negotiating. We're talking to Hamas, but we want our hostages. We're talking to Hamas. Maybe we have an agreement. Maybe we don't. And they strung along the Biden administration. They strung along the Trump administration, buying time for themselves from the diplomatic pressure, buying wiggle room, but also buying time to rearm, buying time to open up new fronts or explore new fronts in the conflict. It is in the context of this that what is happening today makes perfect sense. What are the latest developments in the regional conflict? Let's talk about them briefly. Now, if you recall back in June, when Israel bombed Iran, what precipitated Israel's preemptive strike on Iran was a negative judgment by the European countries on Iran's compliance with the nuclear deal. Just a few days before Israel bombed and attacked Iran preemptively, the European countries delivered a verdict that Iran was in non-compliance with the nuclear agreement made by Obama 10 years ago. Now, after the war and after the dust had settled, the Europeans resolved that since Iran was in non-compliance, that they would have to be sanctioned. Because the nuclear deal says that Iran has to abide by nuclear restrictions, and if they do, they get sanctions relief. If they don't, the sanctions come back. So the Europeans made this judgment before the war happens. After the war, the Europeans pick up where they left off. And in July, they say, look, you are in non-compliance with the deal. As such, we are going to apply snapback sanctions. Iran's economy is already crippled. Israel is sabotaging their infrastructure on the daily, blowing things up, setting fires. There's already existing strain on the economy from existing sanctions. And so there's shortages of water, of electricity, of fuel. There are protests. And after the war, Iranian society is on the brink of collapse. That was by design. During the war, Israel targeted Iran's internal security forces, its military, its government leadership, the Revolutionary Guard, the Basij. So when the Europeans pick up where they left off and threaten sanctions, this could push Iranian society over the edge into a total collapse. The Europeans give Iran a deadline. The deadline is August 31st. If Iran does not re-engage with the IAEA and invite inspectors back to look at the facilities destroyed by Israel and the United States, if they don't declare their stockpile of enriched uranium, then by the end of September, October 1st, the sanctions go into effect. Now, the Iranians said, if you put the sanctions on, then we will withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The NPT is an international agreement. It has 140 signatories, and it basically says that every country agrees not to get nuclear weapons. Now, if Iran withdraws from that, it is an insinuation that they might be building a nuclear bomb clandestinely. That would be an escalation. And this follows the tit for tat. If Europe puts the sanctions on because Iran is in non-compliance, then Iran says the sanctions are on, then we're going to make a nuclear bomb. What do we have to lose? And so they're playing a game of chicken here. The Europeans don't want Iran to have the bomb. Iran doesn't want to have the sanctions. And so the Europeans are using the sanctions to get them to engage with the inspectors. Iran is using the threat of the bomb to get Europe to back off of the sanctions. Now, it was put before the Iranian parliament last week a resolution on whether to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which would be an obscene escalation. That is basically as good of a public statement as you're going to get that Iran is building a primitive nuclear device. What else would that imply if they withdraw from the NPT? It was removed from the docket at the last minute. They never voted on it. A week later, today, it was declared that Iran's foreign ministry and the Europeans had reached an agreement. Iran will not withdraw from the NPT. Europe will not apply the snapback sanctions. And there's a framework for Iran to cooperate with the nuclear inspectors from the IAEA. It is in the midst of this week. This happened this week. Last week, Iran put it on the docket. We're withdrawing from the NPT. We are going nuclear. Today, in the past 48 hours, an agreement came together where the Europeans and the Iranians are going to work together to inspect Iran's nukes, and they will not have sanctions that push over the country. And even the foreign ministry said we might re-engage with the United States in some capacity. In other words, diplomacy might prevail. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, of course, if diplomacy prevails, then Israel does not get its objectives. If Iran is under a framework agreement and has inspections, is not being sanctioned, is in good standing with Europe and the United States, then Israel cannot go in and bomb their missiles, bomb their nukes, topple their government without extraordinary disapproval from Western allies. Israel does not want peace. Strategically, ideologically, they're against peace. So it's in the midst of this diplomatic breakthrough that Israel bombs Qatar, a mediator between Iran and the United States. Qatar with close relations with Iran. And it harkens back to Israel's strike on the Palestinian leadership in Iran last August, or rather at the end of last July, in the exact same manner. Now, what does this do? If Israel bombs the mediator, if they bomb the Palestinians in Qatar the exact same way they did in Iran last year, what do you think the reaction is going to be in Iran? In the Iranian regime, there's a vicious debate right now about whether to re-engage with the West at all. The hardliners say we cannot trust them. They are working with Israel. They are trying to destroy us. They're either unwilling or unable to stop Israel, and Israel is pushing us to the brink of collapse. We should just get the bomb. We're already at war with them anyway. The other side, the reformers, the moderates, are saying this is our last chance. Israel's going to try to destroy us, but we have allies in America that are going to actually try to help us. America doesn't want war. Europe doesn't want war. We can thread the needle. We can make a deal, and we can thwart Israel's true agenda, which is to turn America against Iran and bring them to war against us. That's what the other side is thinking. Now, when Israel bombs the mediator in negotiations and uses Saudi airspace to do it, and the United States allegedly gave approval, who does that empower in Iran? It empowers the hardliners who are going to say, you cannot trust the West. We're going to let the IAEA, which fabricated evidence a week before Israel's attack, we're going to let them come into Fordo and Natanz and inspect the nuclear facilities. We're going to tell them where our uranium is. Why? So they could tell Israel and they could bomb it? So that's one of the developments that's happening. Simultaneously, in March of this year, Israel ripped up their ceasefire agreement that was made in January. They reimposed the blockade, airstrikes resumed, and there was talk of a once-and-for-all operation that would push all the Palestinians out and into third-party countries, and they would annex the territory. They called it the Gideon's Chariot. Over the months, again, in furtherance of this agenda, a famine has taken over Gaza. People are starving to death. Because of the famine, the United States and Europe are putting unprecedented pressure on Israel to relieve the Palestinians by putting humanitarian aid sites inside the Strip, which Israel did. But then Israel started shooting the Palestinians when they go to get the aid. And so this, coupled with the famine and attacks on journalists and hospitals, has compounded international outrage. And so what is happening clearly is that Israel is intensifying the operations more than ever. They're ethically cleansing the population. They're preparing for an offensive to take Gaza. And understand what that means. When Israel re-invades Gaza, they're going to push all the people into one section, and then they're going to kick them out. And once they kick them out, they're never going to be let back in. And once that happens, Israel will annex Gaza and take the land. And then they're going to turn around and do the same thing in the West Bank. And the idea of Palestine will be over. The people will be displaced. The political leadership will be murdered. Palestine will never be a state. It will be irreversible. It cannot be undone. It will be a fact. Just like the territory that Israel currently controls will not be able to be undone outside of extraordinary means. So Israel is starving the people, pushing them to the south, getting ready to retake over. They're using these barbaric means. The famine is worse than ever. So now the Western countries are taking a step to thwart Israel. France, the French President Macron puts out a letter and says that at the General Assembly of the United Nations in September, on the 22nd, they will recognize Palestinian statehood. They're the first G7 country to do so. A P5 nation, a nuclear-armed nation. Next, the United Kingdom says something similar. Conditionally, they will recognize Palestine if Israel doesn't stop. Then Canada says the same thing. Spain, Belgium, Netherlands have a diplomatic row with Israel. Now, why are the European countries threatening to recognize Palestine? Because if, at this General Assembly meeting, these Western countries recognize Palestine, if Israel then annexes Palestine, then these Western countries will have to terminate their relationship with Israel. If, according to France, the UK, and Canada, Palestine is a sovereign state, and if Israel erases that sovereign state, then according to their own law, these countries will have to review and revise their relationship with Israel and potentially terminate economic agreements or trade or a diplomatic relationship. So they're trying to outfox Israel. They're trying to get ahead of it. They're trying to hastily draw a red line before Israel crosses over it. So what does Israel do? Well, Israel is accelerating the timeline to invade. Israel is saying, we're not going to wait for the UN to annex Gaza. We'll do it before you can recognize Palestine. By the time you recognize them, they won't exist. So Israel's preparing an offensive in Gaza City, what they say is the last remaining stronghold of Hamas. They're starting the operation this week. Now, the United States is getting involved because Trump, he wants the war to end. Because Trump, as a unique political figure, although he is beholden in many ways to the Israelis, I do believe that on some level, he recognizes what they are doing. Maybe this is naive, but this is my honest assessment. And I'm not going to go deep into it tonight. But I do believe that Trump does not want a protracted war with Iran. I do believe that Trump is shocked. His conscience is disturbed by what is happening there. I think he recognizes, even on a self-interested level, that it is bad for the reputation of him and the United States for this to keep going on. So Trump has made a concerted effort to bring the war in Gaza to an end. He signaled his dissatisfaction that it's continuing, but he's unable to stop it. Now, he said last week that he would end the war in Gaza in 2 weeks. Yesterday, the United States offered up a proposal for Hamas, a peace proposal, mediated by Qatar. As a matter of fact, Hamas and their political bureau was gathered in Qatar in Doha today to discuss Trump's American-backed proposal for peace in Israel. And according to reports yesterday, Hamas was favorable to the agreement. That is, until they got bombed. What is the effect of the bombing on this? Well, if Israel murders all of the negotiators, then there's not going to be a deal. And if there's no peace agreement between Israel and Hamas, then that means that the war will go on and the offensive in Gaza City will continue as planned. And if it continues as planned, then that means there ain't going to be Palestinian recognition. And the ethnic cleansing, the annexation, all of that will proceed as scheduled. And this is their playbook. If you go back and look at the past 2 years and beyond, every time it seems that there is pressure, like, for example, last May, when the Biden administration was close to sealing a deal, a ceasefire agreement. Every time it seems that diplomacy might break out in the Middle East, Israel does something so provocative that makes it impossible for there to be an agreement. Israel does something so provocative that it makes it so that the other parties cannot engage without losing face, without losing the deterrent threat, without losing legitimacy, without dissatisfaction within the ranks of their regime or the population. Every single time, they sabotage and scuttle diplomacy with these very deliberate targeted strikes. And when you look at the timeline, it's very obvious. In the past week, these two things are coming to a head. It seems that Iran is leaning towards re-engaging with America. It seems that Hamas might be open to a deal. Trump has put pressure on Israel to accept one. So has France, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, Canada, possibly Japan. We're ahead of this General Assembly meeting. And what happens in the middle of it? Israel does something bold, unprecedented. They violate airspace. They bomb a regional power. They assassinate political leadership, an American ally. They make everybody unhappy. And what can anybody do about it? Nothing. What does Qatar do? Qatar got bombed. What do they say? We're going to talk to our lawyers. Someone help us. What does America say? Israel bombed our ally. Qatar is our ally. They're helping us. They stage our military base. That's a problem. What does the American president say? Oh, it's too bad how that happened there at that time. The attack that occurred today, earlier, that just happened. He's using passive language. He can't even condemn it. He won't even say, Netanyahu shouldn't have done that. How dare you? He's avoiding the issue. And what this signals is that we're going to get another escalation. And let's zoom out and take a survey of these other developments. Israel's doing airstrikes in Syria because they're negotiating with the Assad regime for the Assad regime to effectively give them the Golan Heights and much of southern Syria. Israel is intervening in Lebanon. The Lebanese parliament passed a resolution to disarm Hezbollah. And Israel said last week that they will enforce that resolution. In other words, they will work with the Lebanese government to destroy Hezbollah and leave Lebanon vulnerable. Both Syria and Lebanon will be giving Israel territory effectively and joining the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations. Last week, Israel carried out 2 decapitation strikes on the Houthis in Yemen that targeted their ports, allegedly killed their entire military and political leadership, their prime minister, so that maybe there'll be something similar happening in Yemen as what is happening in Lebanon. And once all of that is achieved, then the runway is cleared. Snapback sanctions come down, Iranian economy collapses, Israel foments the regime change war in Iran. False flag, another preemptive strike, some form of provocation. They come in and deliver the final blow. That's the end game. That's always been the end game. And you look at the Middle East and the results speak for themselves. Unless you believe that Israel accidentally destroyed all of its enemies. Accidentally, systematically defeated in detail every one of its enemies in 7 different countries. They defeated the Palestinian Islamist element in the West Bank, Hamas in Gaza, disarmed Hezbollah in Lebanon, overthrew Assad in Syria, decapitated the Houthis in Yemen, and then ultimately disarmed and then overthrew Iran. You either believe all of that was an accident, they got really lucky, they stumbled into that one where they secured every one of their objectives, which previously was thought to be impossible or intractable, and then you wake up one day and they've achieved all of it. It was by design. It was orchestrated. This is always how they've played. And it goes back even beyond October 7th. They did this with Iran before. in 2021. After Trump ripped up the nuclear deal with Iran, there was a possibility that we could have put the deal back together. But you know what Iran was doing in 2020 and 2021 and 2022? They were assassinating all of Iran's nuclear scientists, blowing up their ports. How's Iran going to make an agreement when Israel's murdering their civilian political leadership? Or their scientists, I should say. They can't. This has been their approach from the very beginning. This has been their approach in 1990. The Bush administration wanted to leave Iraq. The Israelis wanted us to stay and topple Saddam Hussein. Bush didn't listen. According to some Mossad agents, Israel plotted to kill Bush for that. 13 years later, they got it anyway. This is what they always do. This is their playbook. And of course, what happens on the other side of it? Everybody on their brother, everybody and their brother is bitching about the famine, about the humanitarian crisis. They're talking about genocide, Israel's wars, etc. No one has the foresight to tell you what is going to happen next. Israel's going to achieve all of it. They're going to topple Iran. I assume that will happen. There's going to be another attempt, at least, maybe before the end of the year. And when all of that occurs, Syria, Lebanon will bow. Saudi Arabia will bow. The Abraham alliance will take shape. And Israel will become the uncontested regional hegemon of the Middle East. They will become a global power. Right now, they're in check, or at least they were in check. They had to worry about Iran and all these forces arrayed against them. They had to worry about Iran. They had to worry about their allies in all these different countries on their border inside Palestine. When all is said and done, the runway will be cleared for Israel to be a regional power. And this is a taste. People say they're not going to dominate the Middle East. They're a country of, 12, 16 million people. They're not going to be a regional power. Look at the size of their population, their economy, their territory. How could a country so small dominate a region so large and so influential? Well, look at what happened in Qatar. Israel can bomb Tunisia, no repercussions. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, no repercussions. West Bank, Gaza, Yemen, no repercussions. Iran, Qatar, no repercussions. If a country can bomb you and you are not allowed to retaliate, then they own you. If Israel can bomb Syria and Syria is still friendly with Israel, if they could bomb Beirut and still be friendly with Lebanon, if they can bomb Qatar and Qatar does nothing to retaliate, then what does that tell you? It means that they cannot retaliate because they're not powerful enough. It means that Israel, if they so chose, they could carry out those decapitation strikes, pager attacks, airstrikes, just as they did it against Hezbollah. They could do it against the House of Al-Thani. They could do it against the House of Saud. They could do it against any of these Gulf fiefdoms that aren't even real countries and topple them. If they could topple Iran, they could topple any one of these fucking countries in the Gulf. And if they could topple them, they can control them. And they can control their sovereign wealth funds. They can control their intelligence agencies, their ports. That's the future. People don't realize that. Iran is the last one fighting, sending missiles at Israel. They're able to counterattack because they're hardened. They're like a fortress. They have thousands of missiles for this. They have advanced air defense systems for this contingency, this eventuality. They have a nuclear hedge for this purpose. They have tunnels and underground missile factories and bunkers and fortresses inside mountains for this conflict so that they could stand up to Israel in the way that all these other countries can't. And they defended themselves, but they might lose. Now, if Iran falls, the whole Middle East goes with it. And Israel reigns. And what happens then is they dominate planet Earth. They already control America. They control Europe. They have influence in Russia. Russia will not upset them. Through the United States, they'll have influence in all of the Pacific allies of America. They will rule the world. Are you ready for that? Have you thought about this? Will it be so innocuous that Israel ruling the Middle East has its tentacles all over American defense supplies, the American political system, Silicon Valley, venture capital, Palantir, the Ivy League universities? No, it won't seem so innocuous at all. It'll be very disturbing. It already is. That's their end game. So this strike today, it's just a taste. This is what they're willing to do. They're so bold. No one can stop them. And once Iran goes, then really no one can stop them. At this point, I hope Iran gets a nuke. We should give them one. We should give them one. And you want to know why? I used to say, oh, well, you know, it's in America's interest not for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. If Israel dominates the region, like it's very clear they will, then they're going to become a brat. You think they're disobedient now? That's when we're sort of still, their patron, their sugar daddy. What happens when they don't need us? What happens when they have a new sugar daddy, which is Saudi Arabia and all these sovereign wealth funds? What happens when they have all the wealth from the trade routes and the energy pipelines, the sea routes, the land routes, the transaction between Asia, Europe, and Africa? We're going to see a whole different side. You thought they were brutal then to our mutual enemies? What happens later? What are they going to do to us? We should give Iran a nuclear weapon. We should treat Israel like we treat Russia. We should treat Israel like we treat Russia, and we should see Iran as Ukraine. We should treat Israel like we treat China, and we should treat Iran like we treat Japan or South Korea. Israel is on the precipice of becoming a major power. Why would we allow that on the world stage? Why would we not contain them like we contain the other powers? They're not friendly to us. They disobey us. They don't share the same agenda. They've infiltrated us. We have not infiltrated them. We're vulnerable. Why would we not treat them like a competitor? We should. We should have Trump land in Tehran and give Iran a nuclear bomb to hedge against Israel. But we'll never do that. And mark my words, it will not be vindicated this year, next year, maybe not the year after that. But in 20 years, you'll see. People say, how could they have predicted this? You'll see. In 20 years, things that you thought were impossible, you'll witness. They will come to pass. You'll watch them reported on in the New York Times. Who will stop it? Anyway, that's that. We're going to move on.
All right, so we're going to get right to it. You know what we do. Let's start our review. I want to start off with Nick referencing in the beginning of the show with how many countries Israel has bombed. And I believe he was saying that it was the past week. It was 6 countries in the past week. I don't think it's the past week based on my research. However, it's kind of wild when I looked it up because I had no idea that Israel was involved in this many conflicts and had bombed this many countries. So let's start off, and this is the most recent of the strikes that Israel has committed on these countries. September 8th, 2025, obviously very recent. That's with Palestine, Gaza and the West Bank. August 7th, 2025, Lebanon, 2 airstrikes in eastern Lebanon. Strikes killed at least 6 people and wounded 10, violating the ceasefire. Syria says not specified in recent sources, most recent reported before mid-2025, so no confirmed new attack found. So they're saying mid-2025. Iran is targeted assassination of IRGC, General Hossein Salami. I know I'm butchering that, so my apologies. June 13, 2025. Yemen was Operation Lucky Drop targeting Houthi officials in Sana'a, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. August 28, 2025. Qatar, airstrike targeting Hamas leaders in Doha. Now, I'm not sure if it's the Hamas leaders or the Hamas political negotiators. I think that's up in the air right now, but that was obviously yesterday. This is a lot. This is a lot. And when we realize that America's playing such a large role, whether we're actively engaging in the attacks, or I should say, whether we're actually doing the strikes, we are involved. We're engaged.
a big reason why Israel feels that they can do these strikes is because, like Netanyahu has admitted plenty of times, we're the big brother, apparently. It's hard for me to understand how this is benefiting us. And when I say us, I mean the American people. We say it all the time, how we understand how this can benefit the elites, a lot of the leaders in the country, whether that's benefiting Trump in financial ways or it's benefiting Trump in them having something over his head where it won't be released if he continues to push these things. And recent discussions have come up where they're questioning whether or not, I think it came up in the Alex Jones conversation with Nick Fuentes, where they were questioning whether Trump taking it light on Iran with the strike that they did on the nuclear base, Israel was not happy with that. That's what a lot of people are alleging. We don't know. We don't know any of this. We don't know any of this. And this is typically how they try to, and when I say they, this is typically how the politicians or whoever's trying to convince us one way or another has us in a position where we can't stand on something strongly because we don't know. But what we can judge and what we do know is what I just read. We know these strikes are happening. We know Trump's behaving very weirdly. We know that all the things that he promised and campaigned on, he's not delivering on. We know that a lot of the neocon never Trumpers all of a sudden have a seat at the table. We know that a lot of the people that passionately supported Trump and are some of the main reasons why he's even in office right now, a lot of these people are not supporting him. Whether it's the Tucker, whether it's the Candace Owens, Dave Smith, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a lot of these people that push for Trump are not supporting him. And I'm not sure if y'all saw it, but I'll try to input the video of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She recently posted like a huge poster with Trump's signature, like Trump's confirmed signature now, showing the signature on the alleged letter that he wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. So just another example of somebody who was probably one of the most passionate people. And maybe this is why now her energy is so strong coming back the other way, because she was so passionate about a lot of these things that Trump was campaigning on, to the point where she was ready to jump out the window for Trump. And now that he's doing things a lot differently and pretty much playing us like we're stupid, she's not standing for it. She's not standing for it. So I'll try to play that video right now. All right, so I want to move on to this New York Times piece on Nick Fuentes. I just finished it. Want to give a little insight. I thought it was, I kind of agree with Nick's sentiments on it. I thought it was solid article. Didn't paint him in a super negative way to where I'm sure there's a lot of Democrats and liberals that may be associated with the New York Times that are pissed off. I also think that it highlighted certain growth aspects of Nick in the letter or in the piece, where they identified a lot of the things that he said early on in his political career at 18, 17, 19 years old, compared to who he is now and how he believes that he's mellowed down. Now, they also highlighted a lot of the things that he still says right now, with the rhetoric, the performative nature that he sometimes uses. But I thought overall that it would be very beneficial for Nick Fuentes. Just so y'all know how it started off, it's funny how the first line, let me see if I can pull the first line of this up. The first line of the first line of the piece says, until a month or two ago, Nicholas J. Fuentes was regarded by right-wing influencers as a mosquito-like interloper whose lifeblood was attention. I thought that was funny. And hold up, fun fact, just learn this. Male mosquitoes do not eat humans. They do not feed off of humans. They're not looking for your blood. Those are the female mosquitoes. So don't be mad at me. I'm just giving the facts as they are. Now, there's reasons for all that. The males, they actually have a primarily vegetarian diet. But yeah, the females are the ones after they give birth, I guess they're weak. So that's why they're looking for human blood. But yeah. Fun fact, I don't know. Y'all feeling it? Maybe not. Let's move on. Nick speaks about his introduction to Trump, and he says that when I was a teenager, I thought he was a Caesar-like figure who was going to save Western civilization. That's how Nick was looking at Trump. And then he said, now I view him as incompetent, corrupt, and compromised. This is how a lot of people are feeling about Trump. And in the article, they said that Nick constantly challenges his audience. He challenges his audience in a way because there's a lot of people in his audience that looked at Trump exactly as he looked at Trump, as a Caesar-like figure who was going to save Western civilization. So here Nick Fuentes comes, this kid, he's only 26, will just turn 27. Now he's challenging you to go against what you so passionately went for, just like he was going for it. Like, who are you rocking with, Trump or I? Now, I'm going to put pressure on you to draw a line and to hold us both accountable. And you tell me who's aligned with America first and making America great. Now I view him as incompetent, corrupt, and compromised. People may not want to admit that, but that's how a lot of us are looking at it. And an emphasis on the compromised and maybe the corrupt. Well, him being compromised is causing him to behave in very corrupt ways. Yes, we got to say that. We got to say that. I don't know if it's incompetence. I think it is incompetence, but perhaps more arrogance, because he's just insulting our intelligence, thinking that we're going for this stuff. And a lot of people are. A lot of the baby boomer Trump supporters are definitely going for it, but I think a lot of the younger generation, and I shouldn't even say a lot of the baby boomer, well, it is a lot of the baby boomers, but I think like a lot of what Nick has said recently, he's starting to realize that a lot of people who he wouldn't think would be following him or who haven't traditionally been supporters of him are opening up their eyes. And I think this is a time in politics and society in America, but perhaps throughout the world, where we're opening up our eyes. Specifically in America, where the Democrats are not happy with the Democratic politicians, and the Trumpers, Republicans, conservatives, whatever category you want to throw them in, are not happy with their representation. And when it comes to this Qatar situation, obviously it just happened. We don't know enough about it to really, well, I don't know enough about it to say anything other than what Nick was speaking on. He did bring up the fact that it's like, you know, you're picking on Qatar and Israel drops bombs and your response is, let's call the lawyers. Like, that's the type of country that we're picking on. But who knows? I'm sure Bibi Netanyahu will have some type of rationalization. Him and Ben Shapiro and whoever else just justifies whatever Israel does by any means necessary. I'm sure they'll have some sort of explanation as to why this is for the greater good of not just Israel, but of America and perhaps the world. And I think regarding Trump, how he wants to react is how he reacted. Remember when they broke the peace treaty and he said, Israel and Iran, they both don't know what the F they're doing. That's how Trump really feels. So Nick actually believes that Trump doesn't want a war with Iran, and that his conscience is perhaps even shocked by what Israel's doing. I think that Trump is just getting bullied. He's getting bullied, doesn't like it, doesn't know how to handle it. You know, here you have Israel bombing who's an ally of ours in Qatar. Qatar, the same people that wanted to give Trump the plane. And Trump is pretty much not trying to call it out as viciously as he would if it was somebody else, another country, bombing an ally of ours. That's how I'm seeing it play out. And just this overall situation, every time these attacks happen, that Israel is striking this country, that country, it really makes you go back to that clean break memo that we spoke about before, where this was just all part of the plan that Bibi Netanyahu and Israel have been putting in play for a very long time to take control of this region, to weaken all of their potential enemies or whoever they believe is a threat to them for whatever reason, whether it's justified or not. This seems to be all part of a bigger plan. And October 7th was that once in a lifetime opportunity. This is what it seems like to me. And Nick made it clear on his end for Israel to destroy its chief enemy in the region. That's what October 7th was to them, an opportunity. An opportunity. That's how people, in my opinion, people that live in fear act. You know, they're always fearful, so therefore they want to go on the attack before something happens to them. And Bibi Netanyahu has made this very clear. In my mind, I think about the date that's coming up tomorrow, 9/11. And especially with Tucker Carlson putting out this documentary, I think it's a documentary, putting out this information that he did. I just watched his interview with Piers Morgan. Tucker, come, Tucker, if you're seeing this, Tucker, man, come on, have a convo with Nick, man. Let's figure this out. But with 9/11, just how they used 9/11 to convince us to go to war with Iraq, even though it had nothing to do with Iraq, based on the information that's being presented now, it seems that Israel was not going to let this October 7th opportunity, as they see it, in my opinion, go by, and that they were going to use it to the best of their ability to do the things that they always wanted to do in this region. It's just how I'm looking at it. And Nick said some interesting things. Nick said some interesting things regarding, we should treat Israel how we treat Russia and China. We should treat Iran like we do Ukraine, Japan, and South Korea. He even said that we should give Iran a nuke. Now, if y'all have listened to me for a couple weeks, few weeks, however long, let me make it clear again, because you may not know. I'm not for war. It just doesn't do anything. Like we've heard it doesn't do anything. And for all the biblical people out there, it says it in the book. Vengeance is only for God, right? Violence only begets violence. I'm not for war. So let me make that very clear. That's a hard stop. Now, moving on, the next sentence, I will open up saying, what I'm definitely not for is for us policing who can and can't have a nuclear weapon. And for certain groups, for whatever justified reason people decide they're allowed to have nuclear weapons, or this group, well, they're allowed to have it, but it's a secret. They don't even have to tell anybody. But this group, no, they're way too violent to have it. Meanwhile, the group that's telling us that group is way too violent to have it, y'all are the ones committing all these strikes all over the place. And I'm talking about Israel. So it just makes you wonder. It just makes you wonder. And it really seems like this has gotten completely, as if it wasn't already out of control. But it's like every time Israel does another strike, it's like, yo, are they, like, do they just not care? Like, is there no conscience there? Like, do you not care about how people are going to react, how you look to everybody? Like, even if you don't care about these people, you want to destroy these people, you want to commit a genocide, it's almost as if they're completely oblivious or just don't care how the rest of the world is going to react. And maybe that's just the power that they feel they have, or the leverage that they feel they have over a powerful country like America. It just makes you wonder. It seems like Israel is like that out of control bully in school. And it may not be the bully, like the big bully. What it is it's the bully by way of, this is going to be a funny one. You ever gone to school? So I remember, I don't want to give any details, but this kid's mom was the principal. And this kid was the worst type of bully. He was the smallest kid in school. He was, but he was bullying not only the kids because he knew his mom was the principal, but he was bullying the teachers, bullying everybody. That's what it really seems like is happening, to where to where you get to the point where it's like, well, how far can I go with this? I want to test my bullying power. That's what it seems like is happening. So I don't know where this is going to end. One day we're talking about the crazy violence that's going on in America. Then we're talking about the world. We're just in a very, very dark place. But the good thing about that is that perhaps we need to go to this dark place for people to realize that, hey, we actually are in a dark place. And we need to figure out a way out of this space moving forward. We need to be more ambitious about pursuing the light and uniting as a group to pursue this light. So however you take that, but that's my feedback that I got for y'all. So of course, thank y'all. Appreciate y'all. Y'all been showing up, man. Y'all been showing up. So the very least that we can do on our end is to continue to match y'all energy. So super appreciative. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Very grateful. I'll see y'all on the next one.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.